It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
Shout out Q. Shout out Q.
Indeed, I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Coming to you from the Trumbull Insurance Agency virtual studio. Turn your stress and anxiety into peace and security with Trumbull Insurance. Contact Patrick Van Kemper today for all your insurance needs at 540-532-0622. And for the rest of our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserve, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate. This is a special edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. I come bringing you this episode because first and foremost, it's going to be a very interesting offseason for one NFL team, the Washington football team, on 2/2/2022. Their new name will be revealed on the Today Show, and a lot of interesting stuff going into the offseason, sort of like a season in review. Why don't we call it? Because the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, as a fan of this team, I feel like we should shed some light on what to expect with this name change. I'm not going to speculate what the new name's going to be, but stuff around the name change and talking about some other things that's involved with it, season and review, sort of like that. Plus, later in the show, my interview with the voice of the Washington football team, Bram Weinstein. So you don't want to miss that. But for the time being, we have a very special guest on the show, a returning guest, one you may know well. He's been on the show before. Sidelines Washington's very own Parker Hamlett. Parker, thanks for joining us, bud. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Got the same natty light we had here on the Sidelines Washington podcast, which we previously recorded. Like I blew my voice out talking about the quarterback position. So you talk about the season, in review. And we all know what the biggest need going in the offseason is. And until this need is met, we are going to be talking quarterback. But we got the the new name coming to distract us from all that. And I really like how you threw in there, you don't want to speculate, because, Josh, there are enough people speculating for both of us to where we can strictly focus on what's important. So cheers to that.
So, yeah, I mean, really quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on season and review, but Washington football team 7-10. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this earlier on your podcast. You can check out Sidelines Washington once again on all streaming platforms and on YouTube as well. Check Parker out. But I mean, we were talking about this, and I feel like that some of the games that Washington could have won, they lost. They ended up having a big deal with COVID, Jonathan Allen, Duran Payne towards the end of the season fighting on the sidelines, a whole bunch of tension that sort of just boiled over, and losing all of their division games except for the New York Giants, and ending up going 7-10, missing the playoffs, obviously. Parker, I mean, your initial thoughts, what really stood out to you about this Washington football team season as a whole? I know that might be a loaded question because of so much stuff that has insinuated before the end of this season, but just loaded question to start off. What was your biggest takeaway from this season?
You could say it's a loaded question, but I think of three words when I think of the 2021 season. Go check out the Tay and Todd podcast. Us on Sidelines, we listen to all the other Washington team content creators, and Tay and Todd have an absolute phenomenal product, team of fans cited over there. And they talk about all the high aspirations, Josh. And of course, once again, thank you for having me on today. Got to throw that in there. All the high aspirations for the Washington football team coming into this season. Some people saying 12 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins, and that extra win or extra loss because that extra game added the season. But 3 words really come to mind from Josh, and a lot of clarity with this, of course. But if I were to say those 3 words, they would be, that's about right. You look at COVID. Shout out to Adam Aniba, former co-host on Sidelines Washington podcast, Burgundy Gold Report. Make sure you guys go check him out as well. He talked a lot in the summer on our podcast about how Montez Sweat's COVID issue or vaccination status would be a big problem for the Washington football team. You tie that in with off the field stuff, tragedy striking with DeShazer Everett, Montez Sweat with his brother, and just, the facility getting raided. I mean, just everything but football related stuff becoming a talking point for the Washington football team. But early in the season had a very tough stretch against some very good, credible playoff teams. Buffalo Bills absolutely manhandling us, kind of a lost game against the Saints, with second half against the Chiefs. But you have that 4-game stretch with that huge win against Tampa after the bye week where you saw all the things that the Washington football team did well last year. And it was a grand display. One that had us using the P word, Josh, playoffs. And we were all excited, right? Oh man, we're 6-7 seed, had everything right in our hands, and it all just slipped away. And I will say this, I know you talk about the National Football League in general, and I do plenty of that myself, being the head of operations over at the Sidelines Sports Network. Make sure you guys subscribe, check that out. The Eagles and Buccaneers game really put into perspective that maybe the Washington football team did deserve to be in the playoffs this postseason. The Eagles certainly didn't deserve to be there. The Washington football team played this Tampa game pretty tough and got a huge win over them. And, the Eagles, in my opinion, really just capitalized all the misfortune for the Washington football team. But all things considered, Terry McLaurin being your only weapon, Taylor Heineke, the starting quarterback, COVID, you put it all together, and what's the answer to the equation? For me, 3 words, just about right.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah. You look, and another big talking point. This is huge for Washington. Taylor Heineke, he ended up playing the
Taylor, not Tyler.
Yeah.
Not Tyler. Oh man, yeah. I'm tired of hearing that.
Yeah, of course. But anyways, Ryan Fitzpatrick goes down first game of the season against the Chargers at home. Taylor Heineke takes the reins. Everybody's, it's such a roller coaster this season. As some weeks people are like, oh, Taylor's the best. He riding the Taylor hype train like you were, Parker. I know that, but and then other games, Taylor would have a very bad performance and people are calling for his head. That's typical Washington fans, in my opinion, in social media realm, so on and so forth. But the biggest question here is the quarterback situation in Washington. My thoughts on this, I feel like if because Taylor is still under contract, he could be a very viable backup option for this Washington football team, because more than likely Washington is going out to pick up a quarterback, whether that's free agency, in the draft, a veteran quarterback, so on and so forth. Viable options, in your opinion, for quarterback of the Washington football team, in your mind?
Well, I'll take a sip of this beer. I'm going to put my thinking cap on. As far as viable options for the Washington football team at the quarterback position, now that I got my thinking cap on. Veteran options, we talked about this a little bit on Sidelines, right? We talked about Russell Wilson. We talked about, man, why am I having a hard time getting this? Derek Carr. And we talked about Jimmy Garoppolo, just a couple names there. Of course, you got your Marcus Mariotas, you got your Matt Ryans. And like you said, this front office says all options, my guy, are on the table. And I don't doubt them when they say that, but all options were on the table last year in the offseason when they should have made a move then. And they were conservative and they didn't want to pull the trigger, and they weren't aggressive. They said they're going to be selectively aggressive now. So I don't know how much you got to take that stuff with a grain of salt, but as far as the quarterback position, until they add a veteran option or they take a guy significantly high, maybe trade up, this is Taylor Heineke's job to lose, as much as people don't want to consider that. Some people will feel like this is the end of Taylor Heineke's chapter. Like you said, Josh, and people remember this, Heineke's under contract next season for the Washington football team. And, Mel Kiper and everybody giving their opinions on this draft class, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis. I mean, no one really knows who the clear-cut number one is. Really just depends on who you ask. And, you certainly hope, and you can't downplay how significant of a decision this is for Rivera. This is pretty much his job. And, something Rhea Robinson, Sidelines Washington contributor, said was, and we talked about it, was right before the draft, it's like, if the Washington football team were to trade it for a guy like Trey Lance or were to make any aggressive move for any quarterback via the draft, if I'm Ron Rivera, I want a contract extension with it. So Rivera wants leadership. He wants, some consistency. And Taylor Heineke did play the entire season, even though a lot of people said that he couldn't. And, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how they go about this. Not a lot of things, being said right now. Of course, a lot of speculation. That's what we like to call on Sidelines smoke season. Second the football season's done, it's smoke season. And, you see where the fires burn out. And like you said on our show, man, I really feel like they might go in a direction we're really not anticipating, but all options are indeed on the table, Josh.
I quickly want to talk about Ron Rivera because people, the social media realm of things, people blow things out of proportion. I've seen them multiple times, but going into year 3 for Ron Rivera, how do you think he has done as a head coach for this Washington football team thus far?
Best he can do, if you ask me. I mean, look, with Rivera, for me, it's always been about consistency. And since Ron Rivera took over for the Washington football team, you can't say he hasn't been consistent. Some of his words haven't quite matched his actions, but you look at everything he had to face in 2020. You inherit a quarterback that you never thought was able to do it in the first place. Battling cancer. I mean, all the off the field stuff as well. I mean, it was just a lot to navigate. You're in a weak NFC East. They end up coming NFC champions at 7-9. You enter 2021, different story. You got Dak Prescott back for the Dallas Cowboys, and you got Jalen Hurts, a starting quarterback for the Eagles. Giants take a step back, but the NFC East automatically more competitive. You miss the playoff race, but you show the league that you can kind of stick around with some of these upper echelon teams. And you're close, but we just don't know if you're there yet. As far as my expectations for Ron Rivera, I say that in year 3, there needs to be some significant strides forward. I'll give him a little bit of a rain check on this year. I certainly can't fault him too much. There's a lot of stuff that he couldn't control. But for me, it's not Ron Rivera. It's the vision of Ron Rivera. And do you have everybody in the building that needs to be making the right decisions? Is Scott Turner the best answer as offensive coordinator? Is Jack Del Rio the best option as defensive coordinator? Who knows? But Rivera has his guys. He sticks them, and he sticks to his vision. I do know that one big reason that Ron Rivera, everything did come to fruition at some point in Carolina was that he was able to acquire the number 1 overall draft pick via Cam Newton and land his franchise quarterback. So if he wants to make any waves in the burgundy and gold, you got to get that franchise signal caller because the defense takes a huge step back this year, certainly the most shocking development of the year. And because of that, you can get away with having like a top 20 offense if you've got that top 5 defense. You take away that top 5 defense, and you got 2 bottom of the league half offensive defensive units, you're not going to be a playoff team, even if you're barely scraping by at 7-9. So very big year for Rivera in year 3. I'll call it the leap year. It needs to be the leap year for Coach Rivera.
Yeah, I agree with that. Great thoughts there. Once again, Parker Hamlett, Sidelines Washington. Find him on Twitter, Sidelines Washington. That's where you can find all of his work on the YouTube audio realms as well, producing great content. Hey, there's a lot more to come, but we're going to take a quick break. My interview with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Washington football team, comes your way next. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you about Regroup Building Services. If you're looking to get your home remodeled, any part of your home, bathroom, kitchen, want to get a deck built, anything like that, Regroup Building Services can just about do everything. And take it from me, because they came in and they remodeled my family's kitchen, and they do a great job. So if you're looking for any sort of home remodeling needs, deck work done, anything of that nature, reach out to my guy Sean Hibbard over at Regroup Building Services today. You can check them out on their website, www.regroupbuildingservices.com, where they do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com. All right. Joining me right now is the voice of the Washington football team, Bram Weinstein. You can find him on Twitter at RealBramW. Bram, how are you, sir? How's the offseason going? Thanks for joining us.
I miss football. I missed that we weren't calling games last week, but outside of that, been pretty good.
Good. It's great to have you on, sir. In addition to calling games for the Washington football team, you also have your own podcast network, Empire Media. I'd like to start off there, Bram, because I've been in this business 3 years. I'd like to get your thoughts. Podcasting, in my opinion, has just exploded. How have you seen the growth of podcasting from where it was maybe before the pandemic started up until now? Because I've seen podcasting just spike, and I've seen people start podcasts left and right.
Yeah, I mean, it's an explosion of content. The entry access point is so easy for anyone. If you can get equipment and you are going to commit the time and you have a general understanding of how to, post audio or video podcasts, you can have a show. So it's very different. The barrier for entry is just so different now. And I think it's a good thing. I think more is better. It's still a very hard industry to break through, but so was general media. There's just fewer gatekeepers, and I think more is better. And I do believe that, in the not too distant future, especially sports content will be mainly digital and online, and that may be used for linear radio stations that remain in business. But in the end, almost all or 90% of the sports content that you're going to listen to from an audio perspective will be podcasts.
Yeah, I can agree with that 110%. So Washington football, let's get right into them. They finished the season 7-10. with Taylor Heineke under center after Ryan Fitzpatrick going down with a hip injury. First and foremost, how did it feel actually going and traveling to call games instead of last season calling away games off a monitor? Because I know that was probably a big adjustment, calling games off a monitor when you couldn't actually be there in person.
Yeah, that's a big difference. You're kind of a prisoner to the camera, so the camera better be on top of things. And there's just like little stuff that, make my job harder. Like when they show a close up of the coach talking to somebody and they're about to snap the ball, but you don't know they're going to snap the ball. It like makes it harder. So there's just some little technical things that make it more difficult. I actually think the biggest difference was the crowds. Like having crowds back was really home and away. There's kind of nothing like that energy. You can really feel the momentum shifts. You can feel the tension in the building, and it's the soundtrack to the sport. I mean, so it was odd the first year calling the games and nobody was there. I mean, that was what was really odd. And now this past year, at least, it was mainly full buildings. And that I thought was really the biggest difference maker for me.
Yeah. So, I like what you said about the crowds and whatnot, because I know last season, especially when Washington made it to the wild card and had that close game against Tom Brady and the Bucs, like no fans were there. I had the opportunity to attend not one, but two games this year, including the game where they beat Tampa Bay. And you could just feel the electric atmosphere of the stadium. And I could just really tell myself how different it was with there being no fans to there being fans. So I mean, what a great experience for that. I want to take a look at their past season. I mean, as a whole, we sort of know it was a roller coaster. COVID got involved, so on and so forth. But I'd like to just get your thoughts as a whole. What stood out to you about this season for the Washington football team?
They're deeper. They're equally as resilient as they were a year ago. I would say the first half of the season, I don't quite understand defensively why they were slow to adjust to, especially their third down defense, their inability to get to the quarterback. And I think the biggest issue, like outside of finding a quarterback, obviously, the biggest issue for them is to get that defensive line on the same page and make them the effective group that they need to be. And then once they schematically switched things up and started having more success, I thought they did an outstanding job of turning their season around. But the hole was so deep that when they had things that were out of their control, it ruined their season. So, I mean, I think there's like a lot of lessons learned here. This is 2 years in a row that they have started extremely slowly. In the first year, without an offseason and without a real clear plan at what the quarterback was going to be like, and everybody's new, and the coach had cancer. Like, I'm willing to kind of overlook all of these things that first year because it was all weird and new and different, and there were a lot of complications. And I'm willing to overlook that and go, okay, I get it. I mean, they turned their season around. That's the good news. The second year, I don't know that they have the same excuse for the start of the season. They should have been, in my opinion, 4-4, not 2-6. And had that happened, the end of the year might not have had the devastating effect that it did when they played in games with half their roster and had no real shot of winning them. So it really feels like 3 seasons in one. Very disappointing at the beginning of the year, and then a little unlucky with Ryan Fitzpatrick and some of these other things. The middle of the year, they looked like they could play to their potential, whatever that is, based on what their roster was and not having their quarterback and not having their stud defensive ends and things like that. And then the last part of the year just felt unlucky, really, more than anything. They had no shot in the first Philadelphia game or those 2 Dallas games, just based on the roster that they put out there. They had really no shot. And unfortunately that ended up spiraling the season.
So, I mean, I don't want to look too far ahead, but just looking at how this season turned out, do you think Taylor Heineke will be there next year? Do you think Washington's looking for another answer at quarterback?
I think he's going to be on the team. Like, I don't think that he's not going to be on the team. I think he's proven himself as their primary backup at worst. So I think he's on the team. And I actually think he played well. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but I do. I actually think he played really well considering his experience level and, a skill set that doesn't have a Josh Allen arm. He doesn't have Pat Mahomes legs. He's a really good competitive player. And I feel comfortable with him as the backup here. And I think Ron Rivera does too. So I think he actually played pretty well. And if this wasn't year 3 after 2 sub 500 seasons where there's a lot of pressure on the coach and the organization to get some results, I'm not sure that they wouldn't run it back with him and try and spend the assets on, trying to fill out the roster even more, maybe find another playmaker, maybe find a middle linebacker, stuff like that, and run it back a little bit and maybe draft a quarterback, but have him under Heineke and run it back. There's too much pressure on them not to do that. So they're going to get a quarterback. The question is how. I think they're going to make a concerted effort to try to trade for an available one in the next few weeks. And if they could get Russell Wilson or potentially Jimmy Garoppolo or maybe Derek Carr or maybe Deshaun Watson, I think they're going to do that and they're going to pay the price to do it. If all of those fail because they either end up somewhere else or those guys don't actually end up being traded, then I think they're probably going to look at the free agent market, but in the end, draft a quarterback with their first round pick. And depending on who that is, if it's Malik Willis, who everyone thinks, needs a year, before he's going to be a full-time starter, Heineke might be playing a lot next year. And if it's Kenny Pickett, who has a lot more experience, then he may not be. So we're in like step 1 of finding the quarterback. What I can guarantee you is just reading what they say, knowing how they feel about where they are and feeling pressure on the outside that they need to produce. They're going to get a quarterback. It's just a matter of who and how.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Looking here just really quickly, the 2022 opponents did come out. Some teams that Washington hasn't played last season: the Vikings, the Jags, the Titans, the Browns. They have the Lions away, the Bears away, the Texans, the 49ers, and the Colts. Just looking at that schedule, how do you think it compares from this past season's schedule?
Well, that's one of the underrated things too. And nobody wants to hear it because it's always an excuse, but that was a brutal schedule that they played this year. It was absolutely brutal. I mean, even under all great circumstances, at Buffalo, at Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Chargers, Dallas, they played a ridiculous schedule this year. And, but nobody wants to hear it. And, the year before, I'll point out the Eagles. The Eagles are Washington from a year ago. The Eagles got in the playoffs, beating all of the bad teams and losing to all the good ones. The same thing happened to Washington a year ago. The exact same thing happened. And they ended up playing, if you go look at their schedule, a pretty weak schedule comparatively to what Washington had. This year, it doesn't look as formidable, but I don't know. Is Cleveland good next year? I don't know. Maybe. That's the extra game that they have. I don't know. Are they? That's hard to know. So ask me this again in the spring after everybody makes free agent moves and we look at the rosters and see what it looks like. But right now, it certainly doesn't look as difficult as this past year.
Yeah. So before we wrap things up, obviously, I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna ask directly if you know the new team name, but
I don't. I'll tell you up front, I don't know it.
Oh,
so
okay.
They haven't told me. So
okay.
I have I have pretty good guesses, but I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's good because I'm not that guy to straight up try to spread leaks or rumors, but this name change that's coming out two of 2022, not too far away. I mean, the hype that's been built up with these making the brand videos. Yeah, I think that's really cool what they're doing with the making the brand videos. I'm sure you were able to take a look. What are your thoughts on how Washington is sort of building up this name change?
So I am, I know some people were not happy with, I guess, how long it took. It's only been 18 months. And I'm actually glad they took their time. I don't think this is something that you quickly make a decision about. This is a really, really big deal. It's going to affect how people feel about the franchise for the next, hopefully, 100 years. Like this is a 90-year-old franchise. It's got a tremendous amount of history. I like that through the process, they have been inclusive with the fans and the people who are really, keyed into it and want to hear their feedback. I know that they listen to them. I know that a segment of the fan base is not going to be happy with whatever they pick. Like that's just the reality of it. And I'm hoping that what it looks like and what it feels like in the end, after everyone has their immediate Twitter reaction to it, that everyone's going to be pleased and, let's move forward with this new identity. And I also do hope, without knowing what the name is, I do hope it really leans into Washington, really leans into nostalgia, really leans into tradition, and really kind of screams the area and does not turn the page on 90 years largely of really, they're a landmark NFL franchise. I don't think you just turn the page on something like that. I think you value it. And though you can't use the former name of the team, it doesn't mean that the championships and all the great seasons and the great teams and units that came through here for 90 years are just forgotten. So I think they've had to think through all of that. And it's a difficult, I don't envy them on it, really. I mean, not everybody's going to like it. You hope that a lot of people will. And you hope that it becomes an identity everybody's proud of. And that's a really, really difficult task.
So after 2/2/22, Bram Weinstein will be the play-by-play voice of a team that has not been announced. So that title will soon be changing from Washington Football Team to the new team name. Once again, Bram Weinstein, find him on Twitter at RioBramW. Bram, any big things cooking for you and Empire Media this offseason? Any big offseason plans?
Yeah, I mean, we are building out. We are doing more video. I'm really pleased with the launch of a recent show that we started with former Capital Carl Alsner and Stephen Wino, who covers the Caps for the AP, called Al's Caps, ALZ Caps. It's just outstanding. I love the show. Carl's really open. It's total insight into this core group that is still together for the Capitals and obviously like looking at the team. So you can find that. We have a YouTube channel. You can see the videos that they put together. I think that show's outstanding. John Keim covers the Redskins, covers the Washington football team. That's the first time I've done that in months. Covers the Washington football team better than anybody I know. He's got insider access, he's been there for 25, 30 years. He's a good friend of mine too. So his show's outstanding. And we're proud of all the products that we're putting out there on Empire, and we're always looking to grow and find things. And, we're hoping to find a Terp show this year. We're hoping to find a Wizards show this year. And that's where we're going.
Absolutely, Bram. We appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the off season, and we'll catch you on the radio waves next season.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, sports fans. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Kirby on Sports podcast with founder and host Josh Kirby, along with lead contributor Dan Dembski. Like, subscribe, and give them a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Our company helps leaders build engaged and productive teams. Exclusively for listeners of the Kirby on Sports podcast, you can take an opportunity to discover your primary communication style and learn more about effective communication with others. Text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free copy of the Working From Home Communication Assessment, where you'll learn your primary communication style, how to better communicate with others not like you, and tips on working remotely based on your personal communication style. 10 minutes, tons of resources. Learn about yourself and your team. Again, text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free assessment report today. I'm Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, where we help you and your team be more engaged and productive by understanding each other better. Back to you, Josh.
Hey there, this is Mark Francis of Icon Real Estate. If you have any real estate needs in the Winchester surrounding area, including West Virginia, give me a call. I've got extensive experience, been in the business for almost 20 years, and would love to help you out. Track me down at Icon Real Estate, iconsells.com, or even give me a call, 247-1527. Again, Icon Cells, ICONSELLS.com. And I would love to chat with you and help you out. Give me a call.
All right. Welcome back. A huge thanks to the voice of the Washington football team, Bram Weinstein. Great stuff from him, Empire Media, and once again, the voice of the Washington football team. Returning here, Parker Hamlett, host, head of NFL operations for Sidelines Washington. Parker Hamlett. Parker, I want to touch now because we did talk earlier about the season in review, but the main reason why we're doing this special edition is because Washington, there's a significance about this offseason, and trying to find a quarterback, trying to figure out the direction of this team is one thing, but a big administrative deal is the fact that this team is changing their name come 2/2 of 2022. And at this point, as a fan, I don't give a crap what the name is. As long as that name will be attached to a winning franchise for years to come, I feel like fans are going to stick by that name and love that name. So once again, 2/2 of 2022, about 2 weeks away. Parker, first and foremost, and we're not going to speculate on the names, but are you dropping some money once team gear comes out on NFLshop.com?
What kind of course I am. What do you mean? Of course I'm picking up some gear.
How much gear? How
it's
much
a couple
gear?
of days. The reveal's a couple days after my birthday, and I pretty much told everybody, look, I want some Commanders gear. I know we're not speculating, but I want some people's team gear. Okay. I mean, look, we all have our super abusive relationship with this franchise. We're masochists. We love getting beat up, and it's funny how much we cling on to a 7-9 season, but what was the narrative, Josh? As long as this team wins, even if they're called the football team, who cares? I love it. I love the W. I loved how simple it was. And honestly, you could have kept a watchable team and I would have been happy. I don't think this W, I'm not here to speculate either, but I don't think this W is going anywhere. And I'm not just saying that because I talk to people. I'm not just saying that because I've seen stuff. I'm saying that because it's provocative. I like it. I love the W. So glad they're probably sticking to that. I know you're not a speculative guy. I'm not going to do it either. We're not going to sit here and argue about if Red Tails is offensive or if people want to howl at games or if, anything should be military oriented. Of course, we'll leave all that stuff to the sheep. But I will say this is a once in a lifetime kind of thing, man. I certainly can't fault people for not liking the old name. It has its racist connotations. No one can refute that. I'm not going to sit here, Mr. Mayonnaise Man, and say that myself. I will sit here and say that name had its time and had its memory and had its legacy. Of course, they're taking all that into consideration moving forward. And I am very intrigued, Josh, to see how all that ties into the new name. We've been hearing about that connection a lot. So very intrigued to see how all that ties in. But like I said, once in a lifetime kind of opportunity, man. When you're talking to your kids 20 years from now, you saw your favorite team rebrand the name. This doesn't happen in the NFL a lot. So just sinking in, people. It's a historic moment. Enjoy it. Kind of a birthday celebration for me. A couple years after I turned the big old 2-5, teams have a new name. And I don't care if it's a jersey, a hat, a shirt. I'm rocking all the new gear. If you're here now, you're here for the long haul. If you're gone, you were trying to leave anyway. So bring in the new name. Like Rivera said, moving forward, man. Excited for the future. So
the one thing some people have said to me is, why would you waste your money on Washington football team gear when they're going to change the name as well, regardless of what the new name is going to be? I mean, the old gear, the Washington football team gear, technically they're still Washington and they're a football team. So you get what I'm saying there, Parker? I'd like to get your thoughts. I know this is very random conversation.
No, 100%. I mean, obviously see the Alfred Morris played. That's the thing. Even though this has not been a winning franchise for a very long time.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's still a lot of memories attached to it. There's still people that have Redskins tattooed on their body. And you're never able to take that away from anybody. And, I know Jason Ryan, I've talked to him and had a lot of conversations with him about that topic. And, you don't want to take that away from the long tenure fans. But the younger fans like you and myself, Josh, all we're used to is losing. The name doesn't bother us because at the end of the day, we just want to win. We never got to see the Hogs. We didn't get to enjoy that. We didn't get to watch any Super Bowls. We didn't got to see any conference championships, divisional playoffs, hardly. So, I mean, we don't have those memories yet. And no matter how we can acquire those memories, I don't give a shit if we're called the Hogs. I really don't care as long as we are winning football games. And even though Rivera's vision has been kind of testy sometimes, and I guess I'm a part of the hive, so to speak. By the way, I just want to say, people like to say that I'm like the leader of the Taylor Heineke army. I mean, I get it. We're both short white dudes. But at the end of the day, all I'm going to say is this. The reason that so many people are off their rocker about Taylor Heineke is that you guys actually had high expectations for him. Look, he comes in the playoff game last year, relieving Alex Smith, who's on one leg, and he brings some moxie. He makes some things happen. Taylor Heineke is like a really bad action movie. You know why you're watching it? It's to see shit blow up. And if something cool happens and it ends up better than you think it is, good. But it was never going to be an Oscar-winning performance. So cool little fun ride with Taylor Heineke in 2021. Didn't end how we all wanted it to. Go into 2022, the new name, new quarterback, same vision. Let's go, man. Let's fucking go.
So
sorry if you got to bleep that.
So I want to get your thoughts because the Washington football team spent a lot of time producing some content in the form of videos about the rebrand. And most recently, a 7.5-minute Twitter video came out about the rebrand and them pulling out blurred helmets and stuff. Once again, not speculating, but sort of the hype leading up to that. I know one of your contributors, Rhea Robinson, shout out to Rhea, one of the best in the business. Check him out as well. He was actually featured on one of those. So were you able to watch all those making the brand videos? What were your thoughts? How hyped did it get you for the change of this name?
People will sit here and cast their stones, and they love to say things like, just get on with it, man. I want to know what the name is. Let's stop with all of this grandiose bull crap. Look, at the end of the day, this is like I said, once in a fanhood type of opportunity here. And the Watch football team knows that. So they're trying to condition you into not calling them what they used to be called. And in order to do that, the transitional name certainly was a great move. One that made a lot of people mad, but it kind of became a thing, something people wore with pride. And I always knew this thing was going to get drug out. And, I've told Jason Wright in person, I was like, look, man, the way you guys are handling this is absolutely fantastic. Of course, everybody in this front office is extremely transparent, but there's one thing they got to keep to their chest. It's the name. And they've done a lot of good job with misdirection. They've done a very good job, in my opinion, of handling the elimination of very popular names. Look, as much as getting vaccinated and not getting vaccinated is a polarizing topic, it felt like Warriors versus Red Wolves was an even bigger one. It divided the fan base, older fans, Warriors, younger fans, Red Wolves. Of course, Red Wolves being the most popular out of all of them, or any iteration of Wolf in general, seemed to be the overall consensus. But that being eliminated on the latest Making the Brand video, great stuff there. Jason Wright, everything that they're showing, they're kind of breadcrumbing us a little bit, but not in the toxic way. So I'm really cool with that. And hopefully it all really comes to fruition and there's a grand finale and they just put the cherry on top and we're able to all just bring this in. Like whatever it is, I'm buying gear. Very excited about the possibility of the black alternates. Of course, you got our FBI Washington football team fans breaking down videos, unblurring stuff, checking reflections in windows. That's just how crazy we are, man. It will be nice for all this stuff to finally be done and be done talking about it. But I've certainly, a lot like the Heineke experiment, I've enjoyed the ride.
A lot of graphic designers are probably out on Photoshop cleaning up that picture to the best of their ability so they can say they have some sort of leak. All over social media, I'm hearing leaks. This is the name, so on and so forth. And I mean, stuff like that. It's just gotten to the point where it's old. In 2222, when the name comes, it's going to be interesting to see for sure. But I mean, with this name change, in that 7.5-minute video on Twitter, most recently, Washington's chief legal analyst left to become part of the Dodgers organization.
Great move.
Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
He's a very brilliant mind, has been very involved in this process throughout. You'll be familiar, some of the Kirby on Sports listeners may be familiar with the term trading up. And to go from the Washington football team to the Dodgers is definitely an upgrade. No disrespect to Jason Wright or anybody in this front office. That's not what I'm trying to say about that. But losing anybody who's been a part of this process since the beginning now certainly makes you wonder what changes are going to be made and how it's going to affect the overall final product. But, you know, he's been very involved throughout this entire process, and to kind of pull him out last minute, I'd like to, of course, you say the Dodgers job being the reason, but, you know, I'd certainly like to pick his mind. But, you know, the availability is probably not there. And if it's hard to get a hold of the squatter, who knows how hard it would be to get a hold of him and pick his mind on the entire topic at hand. But I don't like Vermillion, man. We're talking about it on the show, how the combine draft process is going to be. When you move any of those internal pieces, it's all just one big machine that has to be popping on all cylinders in order to make a good final product. So I hope it doesn't affect everything too much. I hope the vision is still there, and I hope everything is still cohesive enough to give the fans what they want in regards to this announcement, even though I feel like, you know, hopefully it's nothing similar to what we saw with the Sean Taylor jersey retirement. Hopefully it's done well. You know, getting Coach Gibbs involved, that's not speculation, that's fact. A lot of the players involved as well. You've seen Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, all wearing the 222 shirts. So it seems like the organization is doing everything right, and they're treating this thing like it should be treated, a very big effing deal.
So, with this rebrand, it's going to be on the Today Show. They're going to announce it. And then on the 4th of February, FedEx Field announced they're going to have a parking party. And $5 to park, and you can meet and greet alumni, other stuff. In my opinion, it seems like a big tailgate. And I think, in my opinion, it's going to be one big celebration to ring in the new name of this team and just to get fans together. I'm sure they will be selling their new merchandise as well. So, yeah, I mean, is that something that catches your eye? What are your thoughts when it comes to the announcement of this parking party? And do you think it's a good idea to bring fans together to celebrate the new name of this Washington football team?
February 4th, FedEx Field is going to be the place to be if you're a Washington football team fan. And I'm not getting paid to say that. I was there for the draft party. I was there for Friday Night Football. Joey, all those guys at FedEx Field are doing a great job of just making everything an absolutely pleasant experience. You're gonna have your jackass fans wanting to meet up in the parking lot and fight over each other's takes. And I'm a bigger fan than you, and you know all the political stuff that comes to the watch football team fan. But if you're going there to have fun, rein in the new name with some good people that like the same team as you, FedEx Field's the place to be. You talk about the alumni meet and greets. A lot of people, very familiar faces walking around, going to be available to the fans. That's going to be some cool stuff there. Crack open a beer, have a good time, people. Whatever the name is, enjoy it. This is the beginning of a new era. And it's not something that people should try to look in, like, overanalyze too much. Of course, I'm a little bit disappointed. They're announcing on to the Today Show, and how often do you hear a watch football team getting any mainstream exposure outside of scandal? You don't. So, I mean, I don't blame this front office for wanting to get the most eyes on the rebrand for the watch football team. Can't fault them for that. But as far as our people getting together and having fun, and like you said, some merchandise being available at the team store, which is going to be packed. If I get a t-shirt, I'll be happy, Josh, not going to lie to you. But we're sticking Sidelines Washington. Only thing that's changing is the name. We're going to embrace it no matter what it is. We're going to tell you what we think about it. But, as far as speculation, we're going to keep that at a minimum. But I love what they're doing at FedEx Field. I think it's awesome. I think that it's really the best way to kind of bring everybody together and ring in this new name because, like I said, an absolutely historic moment.
Yeah. I mean, the last time I've heard about a team changing their name is like back in the early days before we were even a thought, before our parents were even a thought. In like
in our lifetimes, this is the first for us.
Like Washington used to be called the Boston Braves. You know that, right? So,
yep.
I mean, that's another change, but that was like way before modern era NFL. So in this modern era, this is probably the first time we have seen a team change its name.
Yeah,
yes,
the Wizards. There's a lot of funky stuff with them, but I mean, football. Yeah, the Wizards is probably the only thing.
Football-wise, I'm talking about football. Other sports, yes, the Wizards too, because obviously they were called the Bullets, and they thought it was promoting gun violence, so on and so forth. But anyways, besides that, in modern era NFL, Washington, to my knowledge, is the only team that is going to change its name. We have seen teams move cities, but I've never seen a name change. So it's going to be a very historic day, in my opinion, on 2/2/22.
100%. Extremely excited. And like I said, draft party was awesome. Hated the pick. Everybody who listens to Sidelines Washington knows that. Friday night football was a blast. I mean, the fans loved it. You got some of the vendors coming there sampling food, and just the way they're treating season ticket holders now. I mean, just look, things haven't been good here for a long time, but actual genuine change does not happen overnight. So let's sit here, guys, and let's just, as much as it's easy to do what the mainstream media does and just bash everything that happens in DC, why don't we just form together and enjoy the good things, the things that are meant for us, the things that bring us together. Stop worrying about all the wrong stuff, guys, and let's just focus on the future, because there is a bright future for the Burgundy Gold, no matter what the name is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's about all the time we have. Bram Weinstein, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Great interview. And once again, Parker Hamlett, Sidelines Washington. Parker, before we let you go, let them know where they can find Sidelines Washington, so on and so forth.
You can just pull your phone out, go on Twitter, Instagram, any social media, Sidelines_WFT. Part of the Sidelines Sports Network, guys. If you haven't heard us before, check us out. Everybody's got to start somewhere. I mean, one time Barstool was just a name, and we got a lot of growth over here at the Sidelines Sports Network, covering every major sports. I mean, everything you can think of: football, hockey, basketball, college football. I mean, just everything you can think of. We're growing, and we're growing fast. So, you want to join your favorite? Cover your favorite team for the Sidelines Sports Network. Of course, you can email me and inquire. Silence_WFT@gmail.com. Got some great sponsors over there. Got a great family. Group chats are absolutely crazy. A lot of activity on social media. You're going to be seeing SSN a lot. The Art NFL group chats are absolutely nuts. I love it. But yeah, check out the Sidelines Sports Network, people. Check out Sidelines Washington podcast as well, where Josh is a regular contributor. I've had an absolute blast with him in the later half of the season, just talking all things Washington football. Josh is very insightful, phenomenal product here on Kirby on Sports. So always subscribe to Kirby on Sports, subscribe to Sidelines Washington. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. Leave us a rating, a review. YouTube, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment. We get involved with our listeners a lot. Love the feedback, and like I said, it's always about getting the conversation getting the conversation started and getting a dialogue going, because there's plenty of things to complain about, and don't forget, there are things to be excited about. So, Josh, thanks for your time again today, man. I always love coming and chopping up with you. This is a normal thing for us. We're bros.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. It's only been my second time having you on. The first time, obviously, when the Bucks won the NBA Finals. But hopefully we can get you on the Kirby on Sports podcast more regularly. But once again, this is all the time we have. Want to thank our sponsors once again, Patrick Bankemper with Trumbull Insurance. Reach out to him today for all your insurance needs at 540-532-0622. For the rest of our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate. Make sure you find the Kirby on Sports podcast on all social media platforms, all streaming platforms, and our website, kirbyonsports.com. 5-star ratings, subscribe on YouTube. Anything would be greatly appreciated. We greatly appreciate any and all feedback from the Kirby on Sports podcast. Until the next time you hear from us, always remember to create greatness. So long and peace out.